Welcome to Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu. My guest today is Bill Stafford, the president of the Trade Development Alliance of Greater Seattle. And Bill, it's great to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Eric.
Tell me about the Trade Development Alliance and all that you all do.
Well, Trade Development Alliance started in the early 90s, and it's a partnership recognizing that the global, I guess, or international presence of an area is the region. So our board of directors is the three county governments, King, Snohomish, and Pierce, the cities of Everett, the city of Seattle, and I think very soon it looks like potentially the city of Bellevue on the board. And we have all three ports, Seattle, Tacoma, and Everett, working together. We have the University of Washington, a couple community college systems, and we also have labor representatives on the board. So it's a complicated metropolitan partnership whose functions are one to coordinate among the major players so people know what's going on when visitors come and to coordinate some of our outbound delegations. And also it was given the responsibility of promoting this metropolitan area's international business interests. And that's not, and most people say that they think of trade, of just goods and services, but that's also ports, air cargo. We get involved, international students is over a $200 million business in the state, and a lot of students, international tourism when appropriate, working with our tourist bureaus, international investment at time, which we have here in the region from Europe and Japan particularly, and Canada. And even once in a while, recruitment of an international conference. So it's all of the weaving together all of the international aspects of our engagement with the world.
And what's the range of ways in which you do this work? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of it that's kind of connecting and matchmaking. Some of it, I would imagine, is more event-driven or delegation-driven, as you alluded to. What's the pie chart of
activities?
Activities, yeah.
Well, first we take a couple outbound trips a year. One is a more traditional international business mission of promoting our goods and services and making connections for universities or companies or whoever's going, and raising the visibility of our economy in certain key markets. The other, we do an international study mission where we take leadership out to study what makes other places successful, and we could talk more about that. We host most of the major international delegations that come here, and in certain cases, heads of state, like the President of Ireland recently, and we worked on the President Hu visit from China when he came, the Prime Minister of Vietnam. We also so the inbound and outbound. We also have the website, which is fairly sort of a yellow pages in some way for this area.
What is the website, by the way?
Just Google Seattle Trade Development Alliance, and it'll be easy, and it'll show up. We're hosted by the city website, so but just you'll see us. If you put Trade Alliance Seattle in, you're gonna get a lot of things, and with everything, including a gift guide for local gifts by local people, that rather than give a gift to an international visitor that's made in another country, things that are actually suggestions here. We've got a business trip guide for people coming in. We've got a journalist reference guide for international journalists coming in. So there's a lot of interesting things on our website. We have 18 languages. We also have other materials, for people coming in, and we are a State Department, used to be U.S. Information Agency press center, helping international journalists to come to the region. And so it's, the materials, the hosting, the outbound promotion, and the coordination, I guess, are the major things.
What was the need that was going unmet before the alliance existed? I mean, what led to the creation of the alliance in the first place?
Well, it was interesting. A few key actors, and a number of events. But the George Duff, who was president of our chamber for over 25 years, started looking at globalization. George was always a few beats ahead of everybody else, and in the mid-'80s, he started to look at globalization and our interests in globalization. And I think the sports metaphor thing he used was that only certain cities our size will have an international franchise, and he wanted us to be one of them. He had a study done in late 80s on who was doing what in this area, international, and there was a vacuum, or the hole was that nobody was promoting our business interests, and again, broadly speaking. And so the model, he didn't really have a model, but the model came from a Dutch port director we had and the Port of Seattle, Zager, in his brief stint here. Well, I mean, the story is one time there was a speaker at the chamber, and next day Zager read about the speaker in the newspaper and wished he'd known that person was here. So he called up George and complained and said this would never have happened in Amsterdam or Rotterdam because we have organizations that coordinate this. So George said, tell me about them. And so if anything, we're modeled on a Dutch organization, Amsterdam, then called Amsterdam Promotion, now Amsterdam Partners, that coordinate what goes on in Amsterdam. And that was probably, I couldn't find a model in the United States. There was nothing like us. So really George and some other people, Norm Rice was engaged early on, and Bob Watt, his deputy mayor, and a number of people looking at how, given what was happening in the world, how do we get our act together? How do we get better organized?
The idea that given what's happening in the world, that is the idea about globalization and all these similar trends affecting our interests here, whether it's business interests or educational interests, is certainly well known among leadership, civic or business leadership, political leadership. How well known do you feel like that idea is just with the general public? How internationally connected, trade dependent, and globally connected this city and this region are?
Well, I think it's mixed. We did the studies have shown it could be 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 jobs in this region are tied to the international economy. Some of the numbers are easy, 80% or whatever is of Boeing planes go overseas, over 60% of Microsoft, 50% of PACCAR, Pacific Car and Foundry, the old name, Costco is opening stores in Japan and England. So we did a speech once for one of my board members. We called it Bankers, Boeing, and Barbershops. And we said, okay, if you're Boeing and you're a Boeing employee or you're the Boeing company, you need to worry about what's going on in the world, what the Japanese economy is looking like, what's happening with the European Union. You can understand that connection. And if you're a banker, sure, there's world capital flows, so you need to worry about what's going on with the Thai baht or the different currencies of the world. But if you're a barber or a barista, why would you care about what's going on in Korea or the North Korea or what's... Well, the answer is if 1 in 3 people, 1 in 4 people sitting in your barber's chair are getting their hair cut out of the international economy, then you too need to know what's going on in the world. And so I think the reality is that probably our region is more sophisticated from conversations I'm having than most of the rest of the United States, but still these connections are so complicated that even I think in our region, it's not as probably well understood as people should.
You alluded earlier to the fact that there aren't a whole lot of other comparable models around the country for what the Trade Development Alliance is doing here. Certainly at the time when the alliance was getting off the ground. Now, many years later, do you feel like other regions in the country are catching on to what we've been doing here and trying to organize themselves like we do? And does that create arms race is probably the wrong metaphor to use, but does it create a certain race where now the alliances think about what's the next level up of sophistication or reach that we do, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's not just competition in the United States. It's cities all over the world are competing to be prosperous and for jobs and to make their city or their region and their people do well. And so I think one of the things we try to do is not say our competitors or our customers are no longer just Denver or Philadelphia or Orlando or Sacramento, but it's the world, particularly this region. I have had materials requested and have spoken, and in Kansas City and Pittsburgh and Orlando partly copied us. Spokane has an international trade alliance. Christchurch, New Zealand did a complete plagiarism. In fact, invited me down to kick it off. The most interesting one I got was one day we got a call from a few years ago from Bogota, Colombia. And they asked one of my people to send everything on the trade alliance to Bogota. So I said, why? And they said, well, they didn't ask that question. So then they called back a few weeks later and asked if I would come to Bogota to present the trade alliance. And it turned out that Michael Porter at Harvard MIT, who does the competitive studies, had done a study for Bogota and recommended they copy us. And so how he knows about us, I'm not entirely sure. But the thing is, in the United States, the basis for success is your metropolitan economy. That's how that economic system works. And the key aspects of that, whether it's transportation or in education or the employment market, how well people can get to work, and all the things we argue and talk about here, how well does the overall system work? And in most American areas, because of our nature of our government, in this region there are over 80 cities, 3 to 4 counties, a number of chambers, special districts. It's complicated governance structure. So the need to, but still when you're over in, I remember we went to Vietnam. We took the first trade mission ever to Vietnam in 1993, and we had a person with us from the Puget Sound Vietnamese Association. So we met, one of our first meetings was with the deputy mayor of Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon, and we went around the room to introduce ourselves, and we got to this gentleman, and a young guy, and he said, well, I'm from the Puget Sound Vietnamese Association. So the vice mayor said, Puget Sound, what is Puget Sound? And he tried to explain it was a body of water, and the body of water represented a region. And then the deputy mayor said, a region? What is a region? That's not a concept they had. And so it took him about 7 or 8 minutes to try to explain what it was. Well, by the end of the trip, he was calling it the Greater Seattle Vietnamese Association, and they changed the name when he got back. But over there, they don't know that 145th Street is the northern boundary of the city, and 205th gets you into Snohomish County. They just know there's an economic region, it's complicated, and it needs to be presented, and putting an organization like us together in most places is extremely complicated to do.
Now there's a strategic element to creating this, organizing a city-state like this economically and otherwise, but there's a cultural component to it as well. And I mean, you've now, not only because you're traveling to other countries, but because you're looking at counterpart organizations in metropolitan regions around the world, I would imagine that part of the selling point that each alliance in each city or region tries to say is that, well, there's something about us. It's not just our companies here. We've got Starbucks and Boeing and Microsoft here, but that there's something about the culture of this place that makes it especially competitive. And I'm wondering to what extent conversations about national culture or regional culture or ethnic culture play into the ways that these ideas of competitiveness play out.
Well, we present our region as partly a center of science, a center of research, a center of innovation. I was asked after Kobe, in recovering from the earthquake, Kobe mayors, city people asked me to come to Kobe and do a talk on why Seattle was such a center of research and innovation and technology, and why, where most cities our size would have one technology, aerospace or IT, we had multiple technology and in fact leading companies in that area, in a number of areas. And it struck me when what I said over there, which was, well, one of the things I thought was that if a place is to be innovative, then people have to take risks. And the question in risk-taking is, people are going to fail. And if you fail, how does your society or culture treat failure? Well, that was about one paragraph in about a 20-minute speech. But when the panel with the Kobe University and some government people, and that was the first question the head of Kobe University's business department asked the panel was, Mr. Stafford said, how a place treats failure will tell you whether people take risks and whether therefore they innovate. We don't treat failure very well in Japan. Can we ever be cutting-edge place? Well, that was the end of the 30-minute panel discussion. That was what everybody dwelt on, was how the society treats failure. And therefore, whether people do innovate, whether people do take risks. And I think that's one of the things we say, and one of the reasons we give, that this region out here, maybe it's the old Wild West, maybe whatever, but we attract and allow people to try new things. And government people try new things, business people try new things, educators try new things. It's not just in one area. And so it seems to permeate our culture. The other thing, getting to what your question is, I think we have a asset we use, which is the multiculturalism of the region. Whether we have Europeans, we have Ethiopians, we have people from South America, Mexico, we have most of the Asian cultures here, therefore we have the language skills, the cultural sensitivity skills to deal with people virtually from around the world. And I think that is one of our real assets, and an asset that hopefully these visa issues don't hurt us on. And while I'm just, to tie that is our international students, which I think is key to this also. In Bangkok, there's a UW Alumni Association with 200 members, and a lot of them are key business leaders. We did a reception in Japan a couple of years ago with the UW Alumni Association in Tokyo, with 200 people came to it, with a lot of key people. One of the top leaders of the Emirates is a Seattle U graduate. We have connections, and I can tell you some great stories on the use of where those connections have helped us from around the world because of the students, and because they've got a big organization here in town, the Phi Youths, but also while they're here, but a lot of them go home and present us with great relations in the future.
You talked about the culture of risk-taking and people being willing to move from one realm to another. And you yourself embody that. I mean, you came to this work after having spent many years in government and public service and politics, working for mayors of Seattle and being a deputy mayor yourself. What was that transition like for you, going from politics to this world? Did it seem like you were doing exactly the same kind of work on a different scale and a different stage, or did you feel like there was a period where you were having to learn entirely new skills and ways of seeing and doing things?
Well, I started out with an undergraduate in economics and then a master's in business, which was in marketing. And I started out, was put in Seattle by the Ford Motor Company and was with them for 5 years here, working with essentially small business with the dealer network in Eastern Washington, Southern Oregon, and Portland. So I started out with sort of a business base and somewhat of a marketing base. And then when I came to the city, in effect, I guess I used to some degree my marketing skills because my job was with federal money and federal grants and working with foundations and a legislature, and so you're essentially marketing the city's interests in Washington, D.C. and in Olympia, and also with our metropolitan agencies. And also I had, for a number of years, the sister city connections with Seattle, which are extensive, we have now 21 sister cities. I had that from the inside, and now I chair the commission I have for a number of years for the city from the outside. So when this came up, I thought I'd pretty much done what I could at City Hall, and I received a phone call. They were looking for somebody like me to head up this new organization. Yeah, I thought it would be a completely new challenge. I created the intergovernmental function at City Hall, so it offered me the opportunity to create something new again. And when I did a little bit of checking, I realized there wasn't much in the country, so I'd be cutting something out of whole cloth if I could pull it off. And it was going to be complicated to do, but it was, as when George called me, he said, "Bill, if we hire somebody who understands the politics of Singapore and doesn't understand the politics of Seattle, they won't survive the job. So we need somebody initially to institutionalize this who can deal with people of different political parties, different jurisdictions, people in business and government and labor. It's going to be complicated, and we need somebody to manage that, but also has the marketing and some international skills to be able to understand where the beef is, what the content is that you need to provide."
Did you feel like there was a time horizon shift for you? I mean, when you work in politics, in any level, there's a way in which the urgent issues of right now dominate your thinking. But in a role like the one you have currently at the Trade Development Alliance, your bread and butter is thinking about trends that unfold over the course of the next generation.
It is both. We're preparing a mission to Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand this fall. We're going partly because the ambassador to Singapore is from Bellevue, from this area, and wants us to come. On the other hand, so strategically, we're looking at long-term relationships with those countries. On the other hand, I got to worry about bird flu, I've got to worry about airline strikes, or I've got to worry about the political situation in Thailand right now with elections coming in December and the military coup of the past and the transition back to democracy and whether there could be some instability. You've got to worry about terrorism around the world. I was in Morocco last year, and of course there's been a couple incidents in the last week in Morocco. So you're dealing with both the immediate, committing yesterday to paying for a certain number of plane tickets, substantial deposits, when people's money is not coming in yet. I said, you're dealing with the here and the now, and you're dealing with the long-term strategic view of where this community should be not only keeping our current customers happy, but where are the opportunity markets of the future, like India, where we should be building business relations that may not come to fruition for 10 years.
Now, you're describing when you first took on this role 16 years ago or so, that there was a lot that maybe was mappable, transferable from your skills in politics at City Hall to creating an organization like the Trade Development Alliance. But I imagine there was a whole bunch of other stuff that wasn't particularly familiar. And how did you go about seeking guidance or models or mentors or advisors during that period where you're having to essentially invent an organization for a purpose that is pretty large and strategic for the region?
Well, the first thing I did was I was going to have a small staff. And so the first thing I did is I sat down and figured out what I thought needed to be done as best I could. And that was talking to people too, looking at the Dutch model and talking to the head of that organization. And then I said, okay, what am I good at and what am I not good at or I don't like to do? And immediately I designed my deputy's job description to be what I think I needed to complement me.
Now, right there, though, did you do that on your own, or did you have somebody kind of in conversation with to point out to you, Bill, you're not so good at this, or these aren't so much your strengths?
Oh, I've been around long enough to know what I'm not good at. I know what I don't like to do. If you said, Bill, go in a closet, you're a type A personality, go in and write a 10-page report over the next 3 weeks and don't come out till you're finished, I'd be in an asylum like this, you know. So no, I immediately I kind of assessed. I did, with a lot of experience, both the deputy mayor and government affairs, and having a small office, knew what kind of skills it would be. But I also looked for language skills, cultural sensitivity skills on my staff. So one of my first people spoke Chinese and Mandarin and had reasonable experience there. I had another person who knew Southeast Asia quite well and had lived in Indonesia and some of the Muslim countries, and had another, So I really went out and recruited and looked for people who could deliver some of the things I felt we needed, and that I was not, one of the things from my generation, but I don't have great language skills. I mean, I can, as a child, I could speak Brooklyn. I could barely understand people from Queens. People from Manhattan were completely another language to me. But and of course, when you're a child in Brooklyn, English is a second language to start with. But I look to balance that out. But along the way, I know seeking advice of people and being open to advice is important to do. Therefore, for type A personalities, listening is important to do, and particularly when dealing internationally.
Do you feel like you have, in these years at the Trade Development Alliance, become a better listener than you had been in politics?
Well, I was pretty successful in politics, I think. I didn't, most of the campaigns I worked on won. But, I think it's important. I think what happens is, what's different is when you're listening to people generally from one culture, you can pick things up fairly easily. I mean, because if you get to know it politically. What's more complicated is the nuances when you're dealing with somebody internationally. In certain cultures, they may say yes, but yes doesn't mean, it means yes, I heard you, not yes, I agree with you. And if you don't understand that with that culture, then you will make mistakes. And it's a complicated world, and which makes it more complicated is most business, government officials, educators, because of the size of the United States, focus on the United States. They know who our president is. They know who important people are. They know a lot about America. You go to their country and you don't know who their prime minister is. You don't know their government structure. You don't know, you know, and you don't know their culture. And so you make mistakes. Now, you know, some people overseas will accept Americans don't know what's going on, but I think it's important to try to know. And I also, as one person once said to me, you know, if you understand the people of the Philippines and their culture, you'll better understand some of the people who live on Beacon Hill. Mm-hmm. So it's not, it helps you here also. Dealing with people who are more recent immigrants, which we, of course, as our immigrant country has a fair number of.
Let me ask you in our final minute here, you had alluded earlier to some aspects of our culture in this region that make us competitive and successful, whether it's a high tolerance for risk-taking and failure even, or our multiculturalism. Are there other aspects of the culture here that give you concern or that worry you, that could, if left unchecked or unchanged, impede our competitive position?
Well, I think we have to, as our country has to do, is to worry about the jobs in the future for people who are less educated. The unemployment rate goes up dramatically from a person with a less than a high school degree up through a person with a master's degree in computer science. The wage differentials are growing between people who are educated and not. So I think one of the things for our region, and continued support for a lot of things, is to really give some better focus to how do we provide the jobs and for the people who don't complete high school or just complete high school, because some of these jobs, whether we like it or not, are going to go overseas. It's just less expensive to do things.
Well, it's always a joy to hear you stitch together these different big pictures into an even bigger picture. And Bill, sure appreciate your joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
My guest today has been Bill Stafford. He's the president of the Trade Development Alliance of Greater Seattle. And you've been watching Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu, and I hope you'll tune in again.